Welcome to Hashbang TV, coming from BLN, Making It in Mobile event here in Shoreditch in London, and we're joined by Dr. Tim King from 5app. So
Hi.
welcome to Hashbang TV.
Thanks.
Can you tell us a bit about what is 5app, what's its reason for existing, and who are you trying to attract by being at this event?
Well, 5app is a way of making reliable communications. It's not really understood, but when you're on a mobile phone, you're not reliable because when you go out of Wi-Fi range and then into mobile range, you lose IP address, and TCP/IP is only reliable between two IP addresses. So you end up with unreliable communications, but there's a whole generation of people, anybody under 40, who's never heard of unreliable communications, because it's always reliable, isn't it? So we're sort of aiming to solve that problem.
Okay, so we've all experienced it from a consumer point of view, the whole problem of handover between cells or losing network connectivity and then rejoining and having different, but so how, underlying that, what's the problem?
No, the real problem is that when TCP/IP sections go away, you've lost an IP address because you walked out of Starbucks. It will only ever come back if you go back into Starbucks, because you'll get a different IP address. So that TCP/IP connection will time out after 2 hours. And if you're really unlucky and there's a little bit of data left in the operating system, that just gets thrown away silently. And I was talking to somebody earlier who works in the games industry, and people are buying extra things in the game, like a magic torch or something.
Yeah.
And it's quite often now that actually they ring up customer support saying, I bought this, but I didn't get my magic torch.
Right.
Because they tripped over this problem. But it's not a really big problem, but it's a problem. And the more transactions we start doing on the mobile web, the more people are going to notice it.
So are you kind of binding them to the IP address so it goes with them to the next connection?
No. We actually use a separate packet level protocol on top.
Okay.
And then we do retries when we don't get the acknowledgements back. So we have a separate acknowledgement retry cycle. And then we resend them when we see them again, and then we do a detube if we've seen it already.
Right.
So if I was a software developer, I'm not, but if I were, how would I go about using your tool? Is it some code I copy, or is it licensed? How does it work? What's the product?
You go to an online site and develop an app from scratch, or very soon we're going to be announcing an add-on to PhoneGap. So you simply go reliable AJAX call, and then we do the AJAX call on your behalf back on dry land, so to speak.
Okay, so I'm not tied into using a 5app framework. I can use PhoneGap with the extensions that you provide.
Yeah.
And how do you make money from that?
Because we charge you per transaction.
Okay, so it goes through
It has to go to our proxy.
okay, so it's a proxy-based solution which you then control in the cloud. Interesting.
So the developer picks up that charge, and then they
Up to the developer.
right, so they can work in a cost into their in-app
Or
purchase or something like
whatever
that.
it is they want to do to just pay us for the extra element of reliability.
Okay. So it's kind of quite a technical sales pitch. So have you kind of framed it in a way that you kind of describe the kind of revenue leakage that people could see if they're kind of, operating over a normal kind of network connection? How do you sell it? What's the marketing for it?
Well, there's really two complete different marketing aims. One is to the big enterprise, where they don't know anything about app development yet. Really is, we're not. There's a whole load of things that means that, I say to some people, we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. TCP/IP doesn't work, that's the first thing. Secondly, when your app stops running in the background, it stops running completely. This is true of iOS and Windows 8, which means that any I/O connection, such as TCP/IP, dies because there's no keep lives. And you can't now push data to it because it's asleep.
Right.
So you've got to have the push mechanism built in. So what we provide, as well as this AJAX call, we also provide a way of pushing data to the phone, which involves also sending on Microsoft or iOS or Google wake up in notification so that your app starts running again.
So do you have to think about battery life considerations, or
No, because we're not running all the time. We're being a very polite citizen.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it reminds me of that kind of push email stuff that BlackBerry did and Good Technologies did, that was solving that problem back, 10 years ago. So
Because constant pinging on a mobile network, though, the carriers get quite stressed about that, don't they?
Yeah, but we're not doing that.
it's the opposite way. It's the other direction. It's to the app rather than from the app.
Yeah,
Much better.
So what we do is that you send a message to our proxy.
Yeah.
Our proxy holds it in store and forward.
Yeah.
Sends a notification to the app or the user, who then wakes up our application. We found it and fetches it from the store and forward.
Right.
So if you want to save battery life, don't go and fetch it. Don't go and fetch it.
So far be it from me to say, but the exciting thing about that pitch with my limited technical understanding, is the opportunity for you to provide, software development kit or code snippets that people put into their native applications.
Yeah.
So you're talking about.
They're hybrid applications.
Well, why not? Why can't you provide the same thing that calls your cloud service, for want of a better word, your proxy from native Objective C or from native Android code?
And but you've got our libraries are all written in JavaScript.
I understand they are now, but the exciting way of selling it to the developers in the future, because there is some animosity towards cross-network frameworks and stuff like that. So
we have talked about making it all in native language. We've already written the apps, the app holders, so to speak.
Sure.
So we have the skills in house. But it's a question of what we do first, really.
Okay.
But yeah, we could rewrite the whole technology in the relevant language.
That sounds like a great idea. Really, really good.
It does feel like a big part of the sales push is this education piece.
Yeah, very big, very big. People don't realise that programming for mobiles is different from programming for desktop.
Yeah.
And the more you get into it, the more it's harder. Because you've got these requirements as Microsoft put it themselves. And the whole thing about Windows 8 and writing Metro apps is that you have two major things they're now interested in, which is battery life and network usage. And they never used to care about either of those. But they're absolutely hot now on what they call metered networks.
Right.
And the whole world is used to unmetered networks. Mr. Vodafone likes you think it's not a metered network.
So, how the heck did you end up involved in 5app, and what's your background? What did you start doing, and how did you end up here? Give us a backstory.
It's a long story.
Well, make it short. Be a network-friendly interviewee.
I wrote my first program in 1969, which was programmed on a teleclip on a computer the size of a fridge, which had 4K of memory. Went to university, did one of the first computer science courses that Cambridge ever did. Programmed on IBM mainframe when they had the 3rd and 4th megabytes of memory being installed, which the size of transit vans and cost £250,000. Then I ended up writing an operating system for a computer called the Amiga, which people who are old will remember and people who are young don't. So I wrote the OS for the Amiga.
Oh wow, that's some claims of fame.
That's a badge right there.
It's not the Spectrum.
It's not the spec.
It's not the Specky, but it was better.
Well, there's
Did multitasking properly in 1983.
Isn't it funny that those arguments about I was going to say, isn't it funny that multitasking is a theme that comes back time and time again?
You can cut this out if you like, but I have a good anecdote because I went over there pitching this operating system, which was actually written in a language called BCPL, which is the precursor to C.
Right.
And I'd already ported it to 68,000 chip as part of some university research work I'd done. And so I went over to see the guys at Commodore, and they already had an operating system being developed, but it was obviously going nowhere. So I pile up and say, I can do this, and they go, why would we trust you? 11 hours flight away, 5-hour time difference, or whatever, the other way around. I said, well, lend me a machine and I'll see what I can do. So they lent me a machine, took it back to England. Worked very hard, and I mean very hard. It's one of those times in one's life, sort of late 30s, when you just work from literally 5 a.m. till 2 a.m. And I got it going in about 2 3 weeks. So I went back and said, can I come see you? And the guy said, yes, but I'm really busy. So I sat in their offices for a whole morning waiting to be seen, because they thought I was coming back to ask some questions before I was going to get started.
Right.
So I then sort of got in, put a disk in the machine comes up to life, I can move some windows around, I can compile a few programs, I can do all this sort of stuff. And I sort of get really into my demo and things. And I was just talking to the head of development, and I sort of said, well, that's about all I can do so far. And I stopped, turned around, there was this huge horseshoe. Every single employee of the company was watching my demonstration, and they all burst into applause.
Wow.
Because they'd never seen their computer do anything before,
Really?
apart from just run a straight demo hardwired into the ROM.
Right, okay.
And I knew then I got the job.
No shit.
That's pretty cool.
So how long did you then spend sort of managing that, or you just?
I spent from 1983 to 1985 pretty much spending 1 week in California and 1 week here.
Yeah.
On and off. They call me Dr. Jet Lag.
Yeah, no shit. Oh, man.
But it's a great time. When we saw, I was at the launch of the Amiga at in New York at the Lincoln Center.
Wow.
Andy Warhol drew some pictures on it.
There you go.
I can't remember who sang, but it was can't remember well-known bands.
Yeah.
It was a real posh affair. So it was a great thing to be part of.
Yeah, totally.
And what did you do after that?
Yeah, I'm going to say that it's quite nice.
Everything else is a bit of a letdown.
Yeah.
People,
A bit like launching MMS.
Just like that.
yeah. So a lot of people who meet me, they go, "You wrote the Amiga?" And you go, "Yes." And I was going, "No, it." Or they go, "Oh, that's cool. I used to use one of those when I was 15.
The Amigas, BBCs, and Spectrums.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, it's really weird because a mate of mine from Cambridge wrote the operating system for the BBC Micro.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so the two of us, myself and Paul Bourne, wrote two operating systems to those machines.
Wow,
So they're very
okay.
seminal machines.
Wow.
There you go.
No, I started I was doing this in a company in Bristol, and I fell out with the guy who ran it. He actually went mental, basically. And so I started my own company, and we started doing stuff with that. That chip was going to be the great, huge success story of the age, which wasn't the ARM at that point, it was the Transputer.
Okay.
A very Bristol chip, made in Bristol.
Okay.
I did my masters at the Bristol Transputer Centre.
There
Would you
go.
believe?
There you
Yeah.
go. So we
That was the problem, wasn't
Parallel computing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
parallel computing was the centre, and we wrote an operating system called Helios for parallel computing of the Transputer, and then we did some other stuff, which we did some good stuff, we did some bad stuff. We wrote a whole database system for the National Health Service that was funded by a wealthy individual, but the hospitals wouldn't have any of it.
it? Right.
Don't try and computerize the health service. I think the last time they just counted it, about a year ago, 610 million or billion or something. And I knew it wouldn't work when it was announced in 2000. So
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
go there. No, don't
Yeah.
try and go there.
Yeah.
So we had Penny, and that was kind of fun. And we did various things like remote meter reading. It was quite fun. Little tiny things that read the meter on your thing.
Yeah.
On the electricity meter.
Yeah.
As well, really research projects. Then I got bored. 1994. I was 40, so I got bored and thought I'd do something else. So I started something called UK Online, which was one of the first online ISPs.
Yep.
And I raised £1 million in an afternoon, which I was quite pleased about.
Right.
For an ISP.
Yeah, and it was cheating. I phoned up my friend Herman Hauser, who's one of the gives me my kind of things, and I said, got this idea, would you put some money in? Yes, he said. And then he said, I'll give you a number to call. So I phoned up his number, and a very thick Italian voice answers. And turns out this is the vice chairman of Olivetti at the time,
Okay.
who was also starting a company called TIM, Telefonica Italia.
Yeah.
So they invested in us.
Oh,
Wow.
And I went down and I got picked up in a car. The guy said, "What's the idea?" I explained it. He said, Herman Hauser speaks very highly of you. How much do you want? $1 million. Okay. That was it.
Easy.
Yeah. So raising money, guys, is really easy. Just
Yeah. There you
A
go.
lot of grey hairs.
Just need your little black book.
so that was fun. And then we sold that in 1996 to EasyNet. Not Jet, EasyNet.
Yeah.
Who got bought by Sky a bit later. So part of Sky. I think it's then closed it down fairly recently, but until very recently they had a health centre in Chatham in Somerset, which is where it was all started.
Ah.
So that's quite fun. Then in 1997, I moved out of Somerset, moved to Wales, and started doing technical due diligence, which is looking after other people's money when they're being stupid enough to fritter it away on a high-tech project.
Right.
So I go in and give the CTO a hard time, basically. And I can normally do that. Then I report back to the venture capitalist or whatever it is, wealthy individual, on what's a good idea to go ahead on.
Right.
They have the lawyers who check on things like that. But I just did tech side.
Oh.
And it's very fun. I've done lots of them. And 2 years, 2 years ago, I was asked by a wealthy individual to go and see this company up in Northwest, who had originally made GPS units for cars. And they'd seen that the writing was on the wall for that because of mobile phones having GPS.
Yeah.
So they'd got a contract with a large insurance company who offered motoring breakdown insurance. And when you broke down in Spain, you phoned up the insurance company, and then they found a garage locally and sent a man out to you.
Okay.
But their way of finding a man locally was looking at a telephone book, basically. So they put this system together whereby the engineers all had mobile phones, Windows 6.5 devices, and you could tell where they were by GPS, you could tell how far they'd driven, so you could pay them by the kilometre, etc., etc. And the whole thing ran for 9 months, and it was a failure.
Right.
Because of various things which we know now, which is the telephone, the 3G mobile signal isn't very good outside Barcelona. There was an assumption that the engineers would always keep the phone in the van plugged in, and therefore would always be running.
Battery.
And of course it didn't. So they take them out when they went to fix the car, and then it went to sleep, and then they couldn't give them the next job because the phone had gone to sleep. Because they'd implemented a powering solution.
So this is where the genesis of this idea came from.
Exactly right. So I said to the wealthy individual, I said, close this company down, but take out the IPR which you own, and let's do it properly.
Okay.
So 5 Happy is doing it properly.
Wow, what a story.
That's a great story. Yeah. Excellent. And so what were you doing here today? Briefly, you know, were you pitching or are you...
No, just explain to people, and we decided to take a small sponsorship opportunity because it's the right niche of people for us. We need to talk to developers who understand that there's a problem.
Yes. Yeah.
And they hopefully will then go and tell other developers that there's a problem that we know how to solve it.
Brilliant.
Cool.
Good stuff. Well, thanks for coming on, Tim.
We've had a legend of the British computing industry on Ashbang TV.
We have made it.
We have. It's an honour.